I did want to follow up with the cultures component. When we were talking about life cycle, there was the element of where does this thing end up, and so there's conversations about UMOR, there's potential areas that might be environmental centers that maybe a living residence kind of component, and maybe a connection with Midwalket and Sioux. It ends up on a tribal reservation. But wherever it ends up, maybe it's a prototype that is adaptable to any of those kind of situations, and maybe it does match up with the end user as opposed to, here's the one prototype that maybe it's versatile enough to be able to shift to fit the different cultural needs. So going into the seasons metaphor with the seasonal part with summer and fall, we were looking at, does this thing live and breathe? How does it act like a leaf? During the summer, you've got a lot of green growth, and then in the fall, you start to drop that, and then eventually move your way to a heavier coat or something, and that sort of mixed metaphor there we've got. So the first version is kind of, we're putting on our winter coat, and we sort of huddle in, and this version is really, whatever format it is, maybe these are glass panels of some kind, and they kind of close in, and maybe it forms like a trauma wall of some kind, or encloses the building in some capacity. And so where the windows might be covered at that point, you're still having maybe PV on those glazing surfaces, so it's embedded in the glass. And then at some point during the winter, it's really closed in. Do you have the elements of a phase-changing material, that trauma wall kind of component, or is there something seasonal specific to adapt that cold? So moving from that, then during the spring phase, you've got the growth element, and maybe the walls start to have a trellis kind of system. You start to shade the building with growth that you're doing. But also one of the things that we didn't see in a lot of the houses at Halley's, great big glass walls. They opened up and they had lots of air flow through and natural ventilation, but in Minnesota during the summer, we're going to be having mosquitoes out the wazoo. So one of the things is how do you screen that in some capacity that also matches with our needs. Those screens can then slide aside so you're moving traffic through still. But there's that element that shows that we're still considered our native climate here. And then looking at the different types of seasonal facades that are, the skin is responsive to not only the seasonal issue, but also daily. So at some point, maybe these panels fold up from the sides, and so you start to look through different iterations of that. And is the building having kind of its own metabolism is kind of the question here. Is it the goose down, protecting the animal during the winter, but then during the summer, it's really allowing for a lot more cool to happen. So these sides fold up on this version. So you start thinking about a petal on the flower opening up during certain portions of this time, and then closing itself. So you've got one version where the sides just open up and close back down. And different versions, maybe these shift up and down, and one slides forward. Maybe there's a green roof that the shifting starts to happen. So summer and winter, there's a dynamic of opening and closing. You start thinking about the bison and how it's got a really heavy coat during the winter, and during the summer, that fur isn't quite as thick. So is what we're doing, are we producing, we know the metabolism of the house is going to be consuming energy, but are we producing a surplus? Are we creating, the waste going into food concept, is it providing some kind of work? Something that goes outside that house. So are we sending a surplus of energy back to the utility grid in some capacity? So that's kind of the range of shading the building. And there may be some issues about the footprint of the building and where the panels kind of rest and how far away the house you can get with that. But the general idea here is looking at how we can articulate some kind of wall system.
And I think biomimicry in general is a really great way to kind of develop the concept of what the Solar Decathlon will become for Minnesota. Because, I don't want to say it 100 times, but this seasonal adaptation brings so much strength to design, how it changes, because dynamic architecture is always exciting and fun anyway. But maybe if you do it really intelligent, like this panel slides back and you're growing the grass or food or whatever on the roof in summer, and then when that's all dead in fall, you slide that back over, it becomes part of this enclosure. The whole winter coat idea versus shedding it in the spring versus, transpiring or breathing in the summer to get that hot, humid air out and try to cool down the building. Just envisioning the building itself as an organism and how it adapts to different climates and different locations and even different ecosystems, I think would be something really strong that you can bring to the Solar Decathlon, especially if we take it and really run fit all the way. I think that would be something that would be really strong and very unique, especially if we keep it within the frame of we are Minnesota.